Sabbath? Wow, full house today. Love it. Good to see everyone, and welcome to our visitors. Glad to have you with us. A long time ago, in a different age, in a different time, we used to talk about things like hopes and dreams and aspirations and things we wanted to do or things we'd like to do. But lately, we don't talk about those much anymore. They've all been lumped into a term called bucket list. It's like, bucket list? What is bucket list? I kind of don't like this term. It's actually from a 2007 film called The Bucket List, where it's about things I'd like to do before I kick the bucket. Lovely. It's hopes, dreams, aspirations. That doesn't really factor into anything anymore. It's a hodgepodge of stuff. I want to do this. I actually read an article a while back where somebody put in their bucket list that they wanted to rob a bank. Like, really? Your hopes and dreams are to spend the rest of your life in prison. Okay. Whatever you have makes you happy, I guess. One of the things I'd always thought would be cool was to take a metal detector and go somewhere by the ocean and look for special treasure. Wouldn't that be fun? Go out and find some ancient shipwreck or some old cannon or something. Or like the guy in Alton, Illinois, who found the Civil War relics in his backyard. In Alton, of all places. Who knew? Wouldn't it be fun to find that special treasure? I think it would. And if you're an archaeologist, the holy grail of all treasures to be found would be the Ark of the Covenant. If anybody ever found that, they would be the instant celebrity. People would flock from all over the world to see the Ark of the Covenant. Don't lose any sleep over it, though, because Jeremiah 3 seems to indicate that it will never be found and probably will never show up. But have you ever asked yourself, does God have a special treasure? God does have one. He's been working on it for many, many years. More years than any of us or our ancestors have been alive. And it's sitting right here in this room. Have you ever asked yourself, are you a special treasure to God? Are you a special treasure to God? Deuteronomy 7 and verse 6. Start there. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all the peoples on the face of the earth. That's what God had in mind for Israel, to be a special treasure, to be something that peoples of the earth would look to and say, wow, blessed is a nation that has a God so near to it. But as we know, that didn't work out too well for them. So let's fast forward a few centuries to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Peter also starts out on this theme. He says, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but are now the people of God, who had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. How often do we openly praise and thank God for calling us out of darkness, for opening our minds and calling us to the special calling? Do you feel special? You should. We are a special treasure to God. We are a special treasure that God has paid an awful price for. What makes a treasure valuable? If we say the camera in the back of the room is a treasure, what makes it a treasure? Is it valuable? I have some model airplanes in the ceiling of my office that I value highly, but if I tried to sell them, I get maybe $2.50, maybe. That's not valuable. That's nothing. What makes a treasure valuable? Its intrinsic worth? Because somebody says it is? Because of a unique event that happened? What makes it valuable? In this case, we might ask, what makes us valuable to God? What makes us valuable to God? The answer to that question is found one chapter previous. So let's back up to 1 Peter 1, verse 18. Knowing that you were not redeemed with corruptible things like silver or gold from your aimless conduct received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Christ, as of a lamb without blemish and spot. There is no more valuable sacrifice than the sacrifice that Jesus Christ paid for us. That's how valuable we are to God. He gave his life so that we might have life. And there is no value you can place on that. You could say that we are the most priceless treasure on earth. There's something interesting here. You might not know this. You just read right over it. But this comes from something. Peter phrased this specifically, a specific way for a specific reason. The Jews have a ceremony called Pidyon Habin, redemption of the firstborn son. And this is what it says for their tradition. The child is redeemed according to the redemptive price, which must be given in accordance with Torah, usually 5 shekels. Some wave a bag of silver or gold over the child's head, and thus it is redeemed. Some use U.S. silver dollars, 5 of them. They get this from Numbers chapter 18 and Exodus chapter 13. So what Peter is saying here is not a foreign concept to his audience. They get it. Redeemed with silver or gold. But you're not redeemed with those. You're redeemed with the blood of Christ, something much more valuable. I looked up 5 shekels on the exchange rate last night, and the amount comes to $1.54. $1.54. That's a mere pittance compared to the sacrifice that was given for us. But that's the point Peter's trying to make. He's saying you're not redeemed with this little thing. You're redeemed with this big thing. The impossible gift, you might say. That's the price God was lovingly and willing to pay for our redemption, which shows us how valuable we are to God. So let me ask again, how valuable are we to God? 5 shekels or something much more? Let's go back to chapter 2 again, where we were in verse 10, and look at the connection from where this comes from, because this is interesting to explore this connection, and it shows us our value to God. In order to understand the connection, we have to go clear back to the book of Hosea, chapter 1. Hosea, Joel, Amos. I always had this little coding thing in my head for finding books of the minor prophets. Let's turn to Haggai chapter 2. Let's see. Hosea, Joel, Amos. That's how it works for me. Hosea chapter 1. Hosea, as you know, is a prophet, and he is instructed to marry a prostitute named Gomer. And Gomer has 3 children. In verse 6, the second child, she conceived and bore a daughter, and God said to Hosea, call her name Lo Ruhamah. Now, anytime you see the word lo in Hebrew, it means not something. It's kind of opposite of our English word, because the English word lo means behold, or here comes, or look here. Lo in Hebrew means not. So Ruhamah is having obtained mercy. But when we put it with lo Ruhamah, it means, for I will no longer have mercy on the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. But then look at verse 7. Yet I will have mercy on the house of Judah, will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by the bow, nor by the sword or battle, or by horses or horsemen. So the verse 6 is what Israel is. Verse 7 is what they will become, or what Judah will become, sorry. Verse 8. Now when she had weaned Lo Ruhamah, she conceived and bore a son. So we got a daughter first, then the son. Then God said, call his name Lo Ami. Lo, not. Ami, people. Not my people. For you are not my people, and I will not be your God. Now look at verse 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And it shall come to pass in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, there it shall be said to them, You are sons of the living God. In other words, God has called you from something you weren't to something you are. By the mercy and blood of Jesus Christ, you are sons of the living God. God has opened the door to salvation once and for all through the precious blood of Jesus Christ. And you are now his special treasure. This is the point Peter is making in chapters 1 and 2. God has given you mercy. You had not obtained mercy, but now you have. And you are called out of darkness to be sons of the living God. By and through God's great mercy, we are his special treasure. That's a precious, precious thing. Notice in Hosea chapter 1, I forgot one little concept. Hosea chapter 1 and verse 11. It talks about Judah and Israel together. The children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together and appoint for themselves one head. And they shall come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Okay, where'd that name come from? If you look in verse 4, Jezreel was actually the firstborn son. So God is uniting his purpose and his plan in all three children to show what they were and what they have become. And it is to this what Peter refers to in chapters 1 and chapter 2. Not just a nation, but sons of the living God. And likewise true for us. We are God's special treasure, sons of the living God. So I asked earlier, what makes a treasure valuable? Think about some of the most expensive treasures on earth that you have ever seen. Perhaps the crown jewels. What makes them valuable? Perhaps the price paid for it. It's part of it. It belongs to royalty. Once this treasure is purchased, what is done with it? It sits in a collection or a display for all to see. And it will never be sold. If you ask the House of Windsor in England what price would they give for the crown jewels, they would give you the answer, they're not for sale. These are a special treasure of the nation of England, and they're not for sale. We are a special treasure to God, and hopefully we're not for sale either. These are the special collections of men, extremely valuable for all to see. And so it shall be one day when we, the purchased possession, are redeemed forever and made pillars in the house of God, his jewels, that we will truly become his children and his special treasure.